Hello and welcome to this new session where we're going to look at the risk factors and causes of cancer in relation to the environmental factors. So let us begin. Let us look at the causes and the risk factors in their respective categories one by one. And like I told you, we are going to keep on also focusing on genetics as well. All the environmental factors that we are going to look at, we are going still to remain focusing, we are going to remain also bringing in genetics as well, because each and everything rotates mainly about genetics as the center, as the focal point, and as far as the carcinogenesis and the cancer development is concerned. I'm ready to, for now I can put a tick. Now let's focus our attention on environmental factors. So we have our environmental factors. So let's look at categories. Category number one. We are going to let's use Roman numerals, or let's use alphabet. Category A, we have the foods. Foods that we take in. B, we have infections. C, we have ionizing radiations. D, we have our lifestyles. Our lifestyles that we commonly adopt. I think, and also actually some medications plus chemicals exposed to our bodies. So under these foods, which foods predispose us to cancers? Let's first look at the foods that predispose us to cancers. Which foods do contain carcinogens? Carcinogens are chemical substances that usually induce cancers when they come into contact with our body cells. When they come into contact with our body cells for a long period of time, when there is chronicity, when there is repeated exposure, we end up with cancers. So let me begin with under the foods that we commonly consume. Within the foods, we are now tackling category A, under environmental factors. We have the foods. And within the foods, within some foods, not in all the foods, we have, for example, the betel nuts. These ones have some carcinogens. Then we have afratoxins. What are afratoxins? Afratoxins are also referred to as afratoxins. These ones, actually the common member of the common culprit of the family is called the aflatoxin B1. Is the most is the one which is highly carcinogenic in the category of these chemicals that we ingest along with food. Now, what are aflatoxins? Aflatoxins are chemicals that are produced by a certain mold. You know molds? It comes from a mold. You know molds are under fungi. They are under fungi or fungus. When we use singularity, we say fungus. So we have molds. So there is a mold that is called the Aspergillus flavus. Aspergillus flavus is the one, it is a mold or a fungus that is responsible for the production of aflatoxins, where aflatoxin B1 category is part and parcel of the group. So where does this Aspergillus flavus, where does it come into contact with our food? How does it end up into our food? You know, after harvesting our foods in most cases, especially the ground nuts, the G nuts, the cashew nuts, cereals like maybe maize, sorghum, all those cereals and the legumes that we always consume, even peas. Sometimes we harvest cowpeas and we first put in our storage facilities, in our homes, in our national stores, like that. Now, if with the foods, let me also write, we have our cereals like maize grains, sorghum or maize, or corn, sorghum, wheat, rice. All these are cereals. All these are cereals that we are talking about. Then we have the legumes. We have also the legumes. Examples, we have ground nuts. We have peas, beans, etc. So, commonly in our villages, in our communities, after the harvesting seasons, we usually get our food crops, and after maybe winnowing them, after processing them and winnowing, we put in our storage facilities Those days when we were still growing up, when we were still little boys and girls, I remember we used to have in many homes, in our villages and communities, we used to have granaries. But these days, I don't know what is happening. I think the culture is being abandoned, maybe because of modernity. I remember I would go and I would store some of these legumes and cereals in various compartments in different granaries. And they would do, another season would come and find them there when we are still eating, and in the process would be protected from famine, from hunger. I remember. Now, all those examples of storage facilities. Then some people also store directly in the rooms. They lay polythene bags and they pour the produce there, they harvest there, and they keep it there. So if it so happens that we store any of these products, any of these food crops, the cereals and the legumes, and we store them in moist, cold and moist environments, cold and moist rooms, we end up with moisture. We end up with moist legumes. We end up with moist cereals. So when when that coldness remains and the moisture remains, in the end, our morels, called the Aspergillus flavus species, end up colonizing our grains here, our cereals, and our stored legumes. And eventually, when we start consuming them, of course, before that, let alone we see our Aspergillus flavus or our morels producing, as they are colonizing them, like the way we see blade. When blade reaches when blade surpasses its shelf life, you know what happens to that kind of bread. When buns surpass their shelf life, it means they can no longer be consumed. They start getting bad. They start developing some molds, some fungi. Of course, when we keep blade there, blade that has been sliced. When you keep posho, when you keep mandazi, buns, all those products, all those wheat products, and we keep them, and instead of consuming them in time, and we delay to touch them, and eventually they go bad, they surpass their shelf life, we see various grayish things growing onto that bread, growing onto that mandazi, growing on those buns. And when you see such grayish substance growing on it, those are examples of the molds that I'm talking about. So likewise, such molds also grow on our cereals and on our legumes. They grow on our grains and on our stored grains. And eventually, when we start consuming them, you find that we are consuming, of course, you find that they are roasted in one way or the other, but again, the afratoxins, their products, the toxins that were produced by the molds, remain very, very potent and active. So with the time, for example, we find ourselves getting these ground nuts with the molds. We dry them, we take them or sometimes we first roast them, or sometimes we even simply take them to the grinding machine, the ginat grinding machine. We grind them, we use them to make sauce, of course, for consumption. Maybe we mix it with the silverfish or green vegetables. They will cook they will prepare our ginat sauce. Sometimes it can be even plain ginat sauce with some tomatoes and onions. And eventually, we prepare the sauce. But the sauce which has already afratoxins. If it is maize flour, we take our grains, we maybe first dry them, but with already the molds and afratoxins produced, we take them to the grinding machine. We start taking that portion with the afratoxins. We start taking porridge, eating that porridge with the afratoxins. Eventually, the cumulative effect, the afratoxins keep on accumulating. It can be beans, it can be peas, it can be groundnuts, it can be our maize grains or corn, it can be on our sorghum, it can be on our wheat, it can be on our rice. So all these are susceptible to being invaded by the molds called the Aspergillus flavus, which produces the toxin. Then eventually we keep on eating those products like that. Then eventually we end up with the afratoxins becoming sufficient, becoming high in our blood, and eventually they start the process of carcinogenesis. So when we talk about these chemicals, these afratoxins, we are referring to carcinogens. So a carcinogen is a chemical that induces cancer, that stimulates the cells to become cancerous. A carcinogen is a chemical, any substance that stimulates the recurrent or persistent growth and regulated growth of cells to become cancerous. So any substance, any chemical substance that stimulates our body cells to undergo unregulated cell division are referred to as carcinogens. And carcinogens are cancer inducers. So here we are. So at this chapter of afratoxins, we are done. Betel nuts, they are eaten, but still they are consumed, but they have also carcinogenic activity. So under this chapter of carcinogens, I hope we have all understood. So what do afratoxins do? Our afratoxins, in the end, these days we have a high prevalence of actually hepatocellular carcinoma or liver cancer. So afratoxins, like afratoxin B, induces hepatocellular carcinoma, which is abbreviated as HCC, hepatocellular carcinoma or liver cancer. So you can see from the foods that we eat, our own foods, our common foods that we consume, you can see if we are not careful, what they can do, what they can cause to us. For example, we have government bodies like Uganda National Bureau of Standards. That one is responsible to keep on investigating all the foods that we consume on the market, that are on the market, among the properties that they look for, among the things that they look for when they are investigating and analyzing foods within their laboratories, both foods that are produced within our nation and also from both the ones that are produced by us and also those ones that are imported. All those foods must be analyzed by Uganda National Bureau of Standards, UNBS. That is their role. That is one of their roles to ensure that we are all safe. When they get maize flour, they take it to their analytical laboratories and they look for the aflatoxins. When they are GNATs, they do the same. Anything, even sugar, everything, they don't only stop at looking for aflatoxins, but also they look for other chemicals. When you look at the United States, they have FDA, Food and Drug Administration. It is a body that is also responsible for doing all that job to ensure that the population of the United States and the world are safe from actually such disasters. So when you hear FDA of the US, when you hear our UNBS, that is their role to ensure that we are all safe. So this is what happens. So aflatoxins, eventually they keep on stimulating the hepatocytes of the liver or the liver cells, and eventually the end result is hepatocellular carcinoma or liver cancer. So in these days, when you keep on hearing that, the liver cancer cases are increasing year by year, you need to know these are the reasons. Therefore, my advice at this point, at this moment, is to advise us in as far as eating is concerned, our nutritional habits. We need to keep on noting that it is not always good, it is not good to consume groundnuts today, to groundnut sauce today, tomorrow the same sauce, the other day the same sauce, like that. That's why it is always advisable that even when you have consumed that sauce, we need to be having green vegetables with antioxidants like vitamin C. We take fruits like that, so that those antioxidants are able actually to protect the afratoxins from damaging the DNA of the hepatocytes like that. So that's why it is not, we need to, if I eat GNAT, today is a Monday. So being a Monday, if I have consumed GNAT sauce, again it is safer if I again consume GNAT sauce, maybe like on Saturday or Sunday, towards the end of the week, right, twice in a week. Then also we have simu paste, simu mixed with the GNAT. You know, it makes a nice chipori. It makes a nice sauce for us. We consume it using bread. On bread it is nice, it is delicious. When you consume it on cassava, it is delicious. So, you know, much as those foods of ours are very, very delicious, we like pleasing our tongue. We follow the command of the tongue. The taste, the umami taste, delicious. However, we need to always be very, very careful when we are consuming such foods. We should always bear all these in mind, in our minds. So, my dear colleagues, let us still under food, let us also look at other things that cause us troubles. Still, alcohol is under food, yes. Let me say this time, the drinks. Let me say that the drinks. And which drink am I talking about? The drink that I'm going to talk about here is alcohol. We have our alcohol. Especially ethanol. Waragi. We have our ethanol, we have our waragi here. So in ethanol, in waragi, actually not only all the alcoholic drinks, actually, it's not only waragi, but here, I'll give you a common example. Or alcohol, yes, when we take alcohol in raw amounts, in normal levels, we remain safe. But again, when it becomes a habit, and we keep on abusing it every time, and we keep on taking large volumes, binge amounts, and we keep on drinking our heads off every now and then, every day, eventually, we end up with some types of cancers. It can be oral cancer or carcinoma of the mouth. It can be pharyngeal carcinoma. It can be esophageal carcinoma or cancer. It can be stomach cancer. It can be intestinal cancer. Anything can happen with the alcohol. So now, in alcohol, when you take any form of alcohol from ethanol to various beers, various spirits, I forgot to mention the spirits still under here. But I'll not keep on giving you those brands of the ethanols, the brands of spirits that we like consuming, because you might think that I'm tarnishing and destroying the market. Therefore, we are all adults. We know that alcohol, when you consume alcohol in excess, it is harmful. It becomes automatically harmful to our health. So at this point, my dear colleagues, and to the whole world, I am not going to give examples of those alcohols and the spirits, because it can be actually destructive to the market. However, we are all adults, we know, and we are above 18. We make we drink basing on informed decisions. Therefore, ethanols, the warages, alcohols in form of ethanol, in form of spirits, they end up in our bodies. And when they end up in our bodies, they must undergo metabolism. The liver and other tissues, the liver mainly, and together with other body organs and tissues, they keep on carrying out what we call detoxification of this alcohol. They metabolize it using, of course, various systems of enzymes like cytochrome P450 system with the other subfamilies of the isozymes like, for example, CY3A4, all those CYP3A4 subfamilies. They help us in the metabolism of alcohol. The alcohol, for example, that system where even alcohol dehydrogenase follows, and others in the family of the microsomal enzyme oxidase system of the liver, the males. You remember the males? The microsomal enzyme oxidase system that participates in the metabolism of our alcohol. But let's not reach there. Let's now focus on our alcohol. Now, the moment alcohol has been metabolized, a metabolite that is known as acetaldehyde is formed. Acetaldehyde is formed. As acetaldehyde is formed, of course, we say that a metabolite of alcohol has resulted, it has been formed. This acetaldehyde, as it is formed, following the metabolism of ethanol, following the metabolism of the spirits that we take, that we enjoy, it keeps on, of course, accumulating. So as it accumulates with the time, it causes, it induces the other carcinogenic effects on the epithelial cells of the mouth or the oral cavity. It induces, it imposes its carcinogenic activities on the epithelial linings of the esophagus or the gullet. It imposes the same carcinogenic effects on the epithelial linings of the stomach, intestines, and the liver. Eventually, when you keep on abusing it with the time, without withdrawing it, without stopping, eventually, this chemical, together with the others, they start actually transforming our body cells, the body cells which are found in the oral cavity epithelial linings, in the epithelial linings of pharynx, in the epithelial linings of the esophagus or the esophagus, in the epithelial linings of the stomach walls, in the epithelial linings of the liver, and the epithelial linings of the stomach, even also without forgetting the cells, the acina cells or the acina cells of the pancreas. So eventually, you hear that this person, following many years of heavy alcohol drinking, following many decades, maybe 1.5 decades of heavy alcohol intake, you hear that, he or she has been diagnosed with the carcinoma of the oral cavity, cancer of the oral cavity of the mouth, cancer of the esophagus, cancer of the stomach, cancer of the liver, hepatocellular carcinoma, cancer of the pancreas, cancer of the intestines, all those. So the main product, the major product that induces that disaster of all those cancers, that group of cancers, it is acetaldehyde. Acetaldehyde has carcinogenic effects from today onwards. So my dear colleagues, at this point, we can also look at another chemical or another carcinogen that induces cancers in our body cells or in our bodies. So The next is, we already know what acetaldehyde does. Now we can graduate to something else still under our foods and drinks. Under foods and drinks. So I hope you can see, we already have, under our foods, we already have again, we have chemicals. We are done with the alcohol, we are done with the afratoxins. Allow me to keep on adding on. So, still, we have grilled meats. Grilled meats. You know, we all enjoy grilled meats, especially sausages. It can be beef, it can be chicken, it can be fish, all those, but we like grilling. What is grilling? We have, of course, to those of you who studied home economics, you know what I'm talking about. Grilling of foods, grilling of meats. Those of you who studied foods and nutrition, you know what I'm talking about. And okay, in simple terms, grilling refers to roasting of meat with dry heat. With dry heat, we get a wire mesh, we put it there, and then you find that heat can come from under the meat, heat can come from the sides of the meat, heat can come from above the meat, heating it directly still, any direction. So we know. So when we roast the meats, when we roast meats like that, we are doing what, we're using dry heat. We are doing what we call grilling. Now, grilled meats, of course, they are very delicious. There's a certain aroma that it develops that comes out from grilled meat, from like muchomo. So now let me show you something that happens. When we grill our meats and the heat, the temperatures reaches above from 155 degrees Celsius to about 260 degrees centigrade or Celsius, the meats that are being grilled, it can be beef, by the way, it can be pork, it can be beef, it can be fish, it can be chicken. You know, I feel like chicken tonight. I feel like eating chicken. Chicken tonight. Fish, beef, pork, all the other meats that we know, to mention but a few. Now let's look here. When we grill our meats, of course that dry heat can go as high as 260 degrees Celsius, even centigrade, or even up to 300 degrees Celsius. Now the moment meats are being grilled, roasted, using that dry heat, on that dry heat, it can be pork, it can be beef, it can be fish, it can be chicken. So when they reach these temperatures, especially from above 150 degrees Celsius and above 150 degrees, they start releasing what we call nitrosamines. Nitrosamines or carcinogens known as nitrosamines are released. Nitrosamines are also carcinogens. So you can see carcinogens are released, and the name of these carcinogens is referred to as nitrosamines. Nitrosamines, from today onwards, you need to know that nitrosamines are carcinogens and they are implicated in the pathogenesis in the beginning of stomach cancer. Most stomach cancers result from nitrosamines. So nitrosamines cause what? Stomach cancers. Stomach cancers, carcinoma, stomach, we say carcinoma of the stomach. Carcinoma of the stomach, adenocarcinoma of the stomach. So stomach cancers or gastric carcinoma. Stomach or gastric. Stomach or gastric carcinoma, nitrosamines. I hope we are aware. I also need to let you know at this point that still these meats, these nitrosamines are referred to as heterocyclic. They are in the family of compounds called nitrosamines are in the family of compounds that are called polycyclic and heterocyclic amines and hydrocarbons. Okay, in simple terms, you can call nitrosamines they fall under the member of compounds called the polycyclic amines, and then when we mention heterocyclic hydrocarbons or say heterocyclic aromatic hydrocarbons, still others in the related family, like the benzopyrines, they follow in this group of compounds. So from today onwards, when you are enjoying muchomo, when you are enjoying your roasted meat, all the time roasted chicken. I want the other chicken from oven. I want chicken from the oven. I want the other grilled pork, grilled fish. All the time you go to enjoy that food, those meats, because you all like them. I cannot deny, I personally enjoy them. They are delicious. But as we think about the deliciousness, that umami taste, we should also think about our health. We should also think about the possibility of nitrosamines and eventually carcinoma or cancer of any of these organs that I'm talking about. Our nitrosamines cannot only induce gastric carcinoma, but also even carcinoma of the esophagus, of the gullet, carcinoma of even the oral cavity, and the intestines, including even the liver. So, but the major cancers that are induced by this group of carcinogens, we have the stomach cancers, or the gastric carcinoma, or the gastric